number of us are forecasting that Israel is going to go to war and the United States is going to go to war against Iran. Now, people have to get this in their heads straight. You don't have to be good at math to figure this out. There are 7 million people, Jewish people living in Israel, 91 million in Iran. 91 million versus 7 million. And Iran is very advanced scientifically, technologically, and militarily. There's no way, any way, that they can defeat Iran. And you're even looking at a tiny little Houthis in Yemen, where a couple of days ago, they just hit another place, killed a bunch of people in Israel. This is a tiny little nothing of a place. Here's the thing. Again, what we're concerned about, and this is why we launched Occupy Peace. Not my language, by the way. John F. Kennedy's speech to graduating students at American University in 1963. He said, if we go to war against the Soviet Union and we have an atomic war, life on Earth will be destroyed in 24 hours and generations will be destroyed. That was 1963. It's way advanced now. Let's go back to Israel. Not my language. They have the Samson option, SAMSON. They say if they're losing, they're going nuclear. They have between 200 to 400 nuclear warheads. I'm very concerned about this. Netanyahu, is going to do everything he can to stay in power. And again, they're ramping up the war against Lebanon, violated the ceasefire agreement only about 100 times. They're ramping up the war against Syria. Again, put the language in there. The land that they've taken from Syria and where they are now, they're not going to leave. Syria, Lebanon, and next is Iran. There's no way that Israel could defeat Iran. America's going to get involved in this war. And the people will swallow the crap. They're going to have a false flag event, like a 9/11 type of thing, or a Pearl Harbor event. Before Pearl Harbor, by the way, 80% of the people in the United States did not want to get involved with the wars that were ramping up in Europe. They're going to have a false flag attack, and that's going to try to unite the people against war. That's our greatest concern. So Israel's going to do everything they can to keep escalating this war.
All right, first and foremost, all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakah Quadash. Double honor to the apostles and bishops of Great Millstone, and shalom to the 144,000, the rest of the elect. And so, yeah, I was just watching this video from Redacted with Gerald Celente on it, and what he was saying was really spot on. You know, everything he was saying was on point, and it aligns with Bible prophecy. All right, most importantly, because, yeah, I think he might be like an insider or something. I don't know too much about him, you know, but they label him as a futurist, and he's made predictions in the past, you know, concerning the 2008 stock market crash and things like that. But you don't really hear him bringing out any Bible scriptures, no verses, because he's not a prophet. At the end of the day, the Most High can put the spirit on any man to speak truth. And like I said, everything that he was saying is on point when you line it up with Bible prophecy, because it is the will of Yahweh B'Shem Yahweh Shai, who the world ignorantly calls God and Jesus Christ. It's Bible prophecy that the Israeli state, which they're not the real Jews according to the Bible, all right, they are the tribe of Amalek of the nation of Edom. They're the wicked that the Bible speaks of, the devil and Satan. And the Bible prophesies, as we're going to get to, that they are going to get into this conflict with Iran, which is basically the ancient Elamites or Persians, and that's how America, which is Babylon the Great, codename Babylon, codename Egypt, spiritual Sodom and Egypt, this is how America, Babylon the Great, will be dragged into the Third World War, which is going to be a nuclear war on the planet Earth, all right? A war that's going to be fought with intercontinental ballistic missiles that have nuclear warheads attached to them. All right, America is going to be completely destroyed in this Third World War, and so is the land of Israel. But America is never going to be inhabited ever again. It's never going to be built up according to prophecy. But the main point is that you see how America is involved with all these wars all over the planet Earth. When it comes to America and their foreign affairs, they have terrible relationships, especially because of Trump. But I mean, it's always been the case. It's not all his fault, but you know, Emperor Nero, back in the reincarnation as Donald Trump, he's just been inflaming all these issues, and now he's talking about the talks with Venezuela is over. They just gonna go straight to war. I mean, these Edomites, they about to go crazy on the planet Earth. Like the scriptures say, they're gonna be like madmen sparing none. And even though they may not want the thermonuclear war, all right, because of something called MAD, it's an acronym MAD, which means mutually assured destruction, meaning if one nation like Russia or China, for an example, fires off a missile, every nation that has missiles, they all gonna fire all their missiles off, because basically everybody's fucked at that point. So this devil understands the, you know, the power and the capability of the destruction of these missiles, but yet it's not up to him. It's up to Yahweh Shemyahushai, because this is the second death that the scriptures prophesied about. The first death was the flood that Yahweh brought on the ancient world during the time of Noah, sparing Noah, his 3 sons and their wives, 8 souls, right? Flooding everybody else in the world. Well, the second death is going to be this third world war, thermonuclear destruction, America becoming the lake of fire. So this is heavy because, yeah, America's involved in a war with the Ukrainians and the Russians, and over there in South America and over there in the South China Sea. But those are not going to be the wars that make this thing go nuclear. It's going to be the Israeli state, them fucking small hats, attacking the Iranians while simultaneously creating a false flag here in America, similar to the 9/11 event, to get American troops involved and to get the aid of Babylon, because the Israeli state, they don't have any other allies other than America. And it's a very one-sided relationship, if you will, meaning Israel don't offer nothing to America, but yet the taxpaying dollars of the so-called American citizens is going to fighting all these wars and helping those goddamn gutter rats over there in our land. All right, but hey, it's all beautiful because this is the will of Yahweh Shemyahushai, and this is how our enemies are going to be taken down. Really, they're going to destroy each other, because between Russia, the Israeli state, Iran, America, and even China and other weaker nations, China's not a weaker nation, but the other weaker nations like India, for an example, they now have nuclear capabilities, North Korea, so on and so forth. All these nations are going to get involved and destroy America, Babylon the Great, with their missiles, and that's Jeremiah 50:9. But before I get into the scriptures, I wanted to read this from Quora, because I did a quick Google search after hearing Gerald Celente speak and the things that he said. The Spirit got on me to look up that Mossad motto, which it used to be their motto. I guess they changed it. I was reading on Google, they changed it. But their old motto, what does the Mossad motto, by way of deception, thou shalt do war, mean? And yeah, like I said, that's one of their old mottos. That's basically like the intelligence for the Israeli state, for the gutter rats. You know, like the CIA in America, where you got the Mossad in the Israeli state, right? But this is what this person responded on Quora. It means they'll never stop committing cowardly acts of terrorism for the purpose of framing others. That's called false flags. They specialize in the art of deception, all right? Waging war through deception, through confusion. And false flags ultimately meaning what? They're the ones, they basically controlled opposition. They're the ones doing the attack. They're the victim and the villain at the same time. And the scripture tell you that we're not ignorant of Satan's devices. All right, the rest of the people of this world, they may not really understand. I mean, you got some people that do, but for the most part, people actually believe these are the Jews. You know, they're God's people. We got to protect them at all costs. They're all for this Zionist agenda. But what's been happening lately is that Esau's being exposed. These devils have been exposed, and they pretty much getting sloppy, all right, with their work, with their deception. They're getting caught in acts of, you know, perpetrating terrorist attacks and things like that. And now people have basically seen their true colors, how they just genociding the Palestinians, which, look, I'm going to just say this for the record. We don't give a fuck about none of these heathens. I don't give a fuck about no Iranians, no Palestinians, no Ishmaelites, you know, in Gaza. We don't give a fuck about that. But for the sake of prophecy, it is important. So it says, doing any and everything, no matter how horrific, to trick, deceive, and manipulate the world into giving them their way. And that's how they got into our land in the first place, through the Balfour Declaration. But it was really through that holla hoax, all right, which you know what I'm talking about. They used that to victimize themselves, which was all bullshit. But they used that as an event to gain global sympathy, all right, to play the victim, and so that they can get into that land when everybody in the earth knows, especially that, was it the Egyptian prime minister? I forget his name right now. But brothers could look it up. He said there will never be peace in the land because the Jews left black and they came back white. Which basically what he was saying is those are not the real Jews. The real Jews are the so-called African American or so-called blacks, if you will, here in America. And really, Jew is just short for Judah. And you have the kingdom of Judah, or the southern kingdom of Israel, which is Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. All right, that's what they will be called. When you read the New Testament, even a little bit in the Old Testament, you may come across the word Jew, but mainly in the New Testament is dealing with the southern kingdom, which is so-called blacks, West Indians, and Haitians today. All right, these people in the land, they perpetrating a fraud. They calling themselves Jews, Revelation 2 and 9, or 2 and 10. No, yeah, 2 and 9, and 3 and 9. It tells you those that say they are Jews and are not, but do lie, and how they're the synagogue of Satan. So these people are really the wicked. They're really the Edomites that the Bible speaks of. But, you know, like I said, they had the world fooled, and people believe that at all costs, you know, these people have to be protected because they're God's people. And again, the way how they've deceived the world and victimized themselves, you know, will make you feel bad. Like, oh, these are God's people, you know, they're being targeted. They're being, you know, victimized, for lack of a better word. That's the narrative that they've created. But through this truth coming out, through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shemel Shai, and the true Israelites reclaiming their history, the so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, here in America, Babylon the Great, and scattered throughout the four corners of the world, that lie is being destroyed. Okay, so now people are waking up, and this is becoming common knowledge. You know how wicked and devilish these people actually are, and that's why their destruction is at hand. This Israel-Iran conflict, they're not going to win this conflict. No matter how much pride they got, and they think, you know, they're going to do this, and America's going to step in, and surely America could crush Iran. It's not going to go down like that, man. It's not going to go down according to the plan of you international banking family elites, you Rothschilds and you Rockefellers on down. It's not going to happen that way. It's going to happen according to the way of Yahweh Shemel Shai and Bible prophecy, which, like I said, I'm going to get to it in a sec. Let me just read this through, Salakia. It means following all the evil of the Talmud, right? And they don't follow the Tanakh or the Torah, they follow the Talmud. It means the King David Hotel, Levon Affair, JFK, USS Liberty, German Disco, Marine Barracks, Tripoli, Pan Am, Paris Cafe, OKC, USS Cole, World Trade Center 1, and 9/11, just to name a few. Meaning what? They was behind all of those so-called terrorist attacks. These were false flag attacks. That's the deception that they used to make it seem like it was the Afghanistan's. Oh, it was Osama bin Laden. You know, creating these boogeymen to be the bad guys when really they the bad guy. It's no different than like a old Scooby-Doo episode. Or where you got the dude running around causing all this mischief, and he's wearing a mask, so he's concealing his identity. And at the end, when they take the mask off, they find out who actually was behind all the fuckery and the bullshit. And that's what's happening right now. You Edomites are being exposed. You're not the people of the Lord. You don't fit none of the biblical descriptions of the true Israelites according to the Bible, which is a holy, righteous people. We know that 2/3 of our people right now, they're wicked. They got to be destroyed. We know that. All right. But in general, the Lord chose the nation of Israel to be the righteous. He didn't choose you Edomites. You're the wicked. You're the devil. It means being the worst human beings on the planet and justifying it with psychotic, narcissistic bullshit beliefs for their own self-centered, selfish purposes. And that's them claiming our identity, which obviously the person that's writing this, I'm just going by the spirit, sound like an Edomite. All right, because they sound like they don't even believe in the Bible, and they're taking the viewpoint of, oh, we're the Jews and all that as bullshit, like made up bullshit, which there is a truth aspect behind it, because yes, the Israelites are the Lord's chosen people, and they will rule in the kingdom of heaven over all nations. And the Most High compared all the other heathen nations to be nothing compared to his people. So in that aspect, there's truth behind that. The Most High is a separatist. He is racist. He is for his people. He chose one nation, but they're not the nation. They're pretending to be the nation. They're not the nation of people that the Lord chose. They're the nation of people the Lord hates. It says specializing in mass murder, mostly innocent women and children without a drop of sympathy, empathy, or humanity in the name of Zionism, and never taking any responsibility for it. It means lying, cheating, stealing, and even attacking and murdering their own, like we just saw at the music concert event to pin on Hamas. Once again, false flags, because that's what they do. It's what they've always done and will continue to do, like attacking Palestinians, then claiming they were just defending themselves over and over again. Over 2 million innocent people were murdered because of their 9/11 bullshit. Getting us to do the dirty work by killing Americans isn't something new either. That's the main point that I want to stick with. getting us, the United States, the military, the government of the United States of America, to do the dirty work by killing Americans isn't something new either. And sooner or later, we're going to pay for it. This is beautiful, man. People are starting to see. They don't even understand the scriptures. They can't go into the Bible like I'm about to do through the spirit and power of Yahweh by Shai, being taught, of course, through the proper leadership. They can't go into the Bible and prove this, but they could see it on a carnal, earthly level. So what's really the excuse for any of you Israelites that you don't believe America is going to be the lake of fire, you stupid ass Genesis idiots? All right, how come you can't see that? That America has to be burnt from head to toe? And forget about paying for, killing 2 million people that's innocent because of a false flag. No, forget about that. We talking about the slavery that happened here in America. All right, these Edomites come into America, rape, robbing, and murdering the indigenous people of the land, which was the tribes, the northern kingdom tribes of Israel. All right, Ephraim, Simeon, Gad, Reuben, Issachar, Naphtali, so on and so forth. Right, slaughtering them, stealing the land, and bringing the tribes of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi from the west coast of Africa onto in slave ships to serve slavery here in America. That's what America really got to pay for. Fuck all this other bullshit. Like I said, the Most High don't care about them goddamn heathens, them 2 million stinking ass Arabs. The Most High don't care about that. Most High don't care about what you Edomites do onto the other nations. You're gonna have to pay for what you did to his people, the nation of Israel. And that's why America is going to be destroyed. That's why America is being dragged into this Third World War, because of them goddamn gutter rat small hats. It says, which is what they actually want. Once they're done getting us to murder everyone in the Middle East so they can steal all the land, will be next. And there is not going to be no next. All of you devils are going to be destroyed in this Third World War. There's not going to be no next nothing. The next kingdom is the kingdom of Yahushua, because he's going to have to come back and save the elect from this Third World War destruction. All right, from this lake of fire, from this nuclear annihilation. And he's also going to bring more fire on top of it to make sure America is completely wiped off the face of the earth, man. That's how this thing is going down. Let me get some scriptures now. Let me get Joel, the 3rd chapter. I have a list of notes because pretty much he made some good points. He mentioned how Iran is basically much more sophisticated now. They have more numbers. We're going to get to that in a second, the least of the flock. These crackers are not populating as much as they would like to, and they're not the majority in number. All right, which makes them inferior. It makes them smaller. It makes them least. All right, and like Obadiah said, despised. Everybody hates you goddamn small hats, and they can't wait to get rid of you. All right, this is Joel chapter 3, verse 10. It says, beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears, going into how these nations have been putting their money, their economy towards building up nuclear arsenals and building up their military. All right, building up anti-missile defense systems and so on and so forth, rather than plowshares and pruning hooks, which is agriculture. So they're not really too concerned about their agriculture and advancing their crops and their farming. They're not worried about that. They know that all of that will be worth nothing if they can't contend on a military level in this Third World War. They're gonna get wiped out anyway. So they're not concerned about building up their economies. All these nations right now, they're borrowing money, more and more money, plunging themselves in further debt to see who's going to come out the winner of this Third World War. It's not going to be none of you. Nobody wins in a Third World War. Didn't you hear Putin say that? And some of these world leaders, they got some type of sense, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. The Lord is going to turn the hearts of the kings whithersoever he will. Proverbs, the 21st chapter. It doesn't matter what they think, what they want, what they know, what they don't want. It doesn't matter. Man's goings are of the Lord. It says, let the weak say, I am strong. So these weaker nations that at one time, they didn't have no foot, in the nuclear arms race, so to speak, and they were just basically like third world countries. They were nobodies. They weren't even on the world stage as any type of superpower or anything like America and Russia throughout, the Cold War, the nuclear arms race, like I mentioned, creating nuclear missiles at a rapid rate, advancing the technologies at a rapid rate, which is Daniel, the 12th chapter, knowledge shall increase. Well, now the weaker nations, like Iran, for an example, like North Korea, for an example, they're able to say they're strong. And that links up with Jeremiah, the 51st chapter as well, where it tells you that the Lord have opened his armory. He created the smith that bloweth the coals in the fire, which today are nuclear physicists or nuclear scientists, the ones that are behind splitting the atoms, splitting the nucleus to create this devastating weapon. Yeah, we know that Esau, first and foremost, the so-called YT man, he was the one that was given that blessing of the sword when you go back to Genesis 27. And even in Revelation 6, it mentions that red horse, all right, about how it was given a great sword unto him to take peace from the earth. We know that he's the main man with the blessing of the sword, all right. It's mainly his technology, but the Lord have also given it to the heathen nations now, all right, to even the playing field, and that so basically they could destroy America, which really is going to be Russia, which is more Edomites that's going to be mainly responsible for the destruction of Babylon the Great, all right, but also the weaker nations as well, these other heathen nations which are nothing. The Lord has basically given them the technology as well for them to say that they are strong now, so that they can ultimately destroy America, Babylon the Great. Jeremiah 50:9. Once again, the North country and all the company with the North, which is Russia, but Russia has allies. Russia has nations that it has to protect. We're going to get into that. Let me get Jeremiah chapter 50 and verse 45. It says, therefore hear ye the counsel of the Lord Yahweh. This is the counsel. All right, before you go to war, you got to have a council, right? You got to sit down. You got to count the cost. You got to figure things out. How you going to attack? Which gates you going to attack first? Are you going to siege the city? Are you going to cut off the water supply, etc.? You got to have a whole plan. You don't just go to war. That's what niggas do. Niggas just start wars off of emotions. No, the Lord has a council. And in the heavens, you got the holy angels. You got Yahushua, first and foremost, the only begotten Son of the Heavenly Father, at his right hand. And you have the holy angels, beginning with the archangels, which Michael the archangel, is the head of. All right, and what do? They have councils. And what do we do on the earth? We receive the counsels of the Lord through the Holy Spirit, through this word, through the understanding of prophecy and what the will of Yahweh by Shemyahushai is. It is revealed unto his servants, the prophets. Amos 3:7. He would do nothing. The Lord ain't just going to make a move and attack unless he lets the prophets know first, so the prophets could then prophesy it and speak it. Gerald Celente is not a prophet, but yet what he's saying is true. So then this is our job as the prophets, the men of the Lord, to then take this information, these different videos, this different news that we're seeing in the world, global events, and filter it through the Bible and link it directly to Bible prophecy to let you Israelites know what time we're living in, man. We are very close to World War III, but we know that prophecy has a chronological order to it. World War III is not going to happen until the chip, the RFID micro CHIP, the MOTB, is made mandatory. All right, that's a sequence of prophecy. When you read the book of Revelation, that has to happen first, but we're right at the door, man. All right, the technology is already here. It's already happening. So therefore, hear ye the counsel of the Lord that he have taken against Babylon, America. Because this didn't happen to ancient Babylon, which is modern day Iraq. Modern day Iraq is still inhabited. Okay, it was never destroyed by fire. It was never taken down in a war that it got dragged into. It was just absolved into the Medo-Persian Empire. Okay, they strategically striked it to where they didn't have to go to a full-out, conventional war, if you will. It was invaded and it was overtaken in one night. It says, and his purposes that he have purpose against the land of the Chaldeans, which is America. Once again, the Chaldeans are the witches and warlocks of ancient Babylon. All right, and this place is the mistress of witchcraft. That's all you got here in America, through the pharmacy industry, GMO food, poison in the air, you know, the so-called television, which is the media, social media medium for the demons. This is the purpose that the Lord has against this wicked ass fucking sinful kingdom. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them. Who is the least of the flock? What flock is it talking about? The flock of the Edomites. Who is the least amongst the nation of Edom? Who is the worst of the heathen, according to Ezekiel? What is that? I think it's 36. It says the worst of the heathen. It's talking about them small hats, some goddamn gutter rats that are in our land. They are the least. You heard the numbers, 7 million population of Israelis, all right, of Amalek, small hats, versus 91 million Persians or Elam or Iranians. There's no possible way they can win this war, man. That's why Babylon is going to be drawn out. That's why they're going to be pulled into this war through another false flag event similar to 9/11. That's what dragged them out the first time into the Afghan war or whatever, the Afghanistan war. That one event changed the world and basically had the president, I think it was George Bush at the time, Jr., and he sent them troops out there, man, and started this war that basically got America so jacked up through the economy, through borrowing so much goddamn money for the defense budget. I mean, that completely disrupted so-called American life. And guess what? That was done by the least of the flock. These people, they don't fucking play by the goddamn rules, man. They also got another motto, which is something along the lines of show no mercy. I forget exactly how it goes. Elder Gaz said it on Saturday. I didn't look that one up, but pretty much that's how it goes. You know, expect no mercy. I believe that's how it goes. So these people, they just don't give a fuck, man. This is the devil that we're dealing with, Satan that the Bible speaks of. And this is why Yahweh is going to have this third war happen this way, all right, for their utter destruction in the end. They're only going to destroy themselves. That's what's going to happen here, man. Because basically, once them rats attack Iran while simultaneously creating a false flag here in America to get American troops over there, and Putin already said that if America gets involved, or even if the Israeli state attacks Iran, they've declared them publicly as an ally, right? And he said, if you attack them, we're going to defend them. We're going to help them. So this is Ezekiel 38. And I'm going to get straight to the point, verse 4. And I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth and all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. So this is going into how the Most High is basically putting that Soviet Union spirit, that USSR spirit, back on Putin. If you notice these last couple of years, especially since the Orange Ranger Trump been in office, you know, this is his second time being in office now. He's basically been stirring that pot, man. And, you know, Putin's demeanor has been changing. And that's the Lord doing it. Once again, Proverbs 21:1, he's changing his mind. That's what it means by I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws. All right, he's tapping back into that USSR Soviet spirit, in which after that Second World War, the tensions was at its highest between America and Russia through the Cold War, that nuclear arms race, building up their nuclear arsenals, what at the time was atomic, but it became nuclear, and basically saying to each other, look, I got X, Y, Z, and I got this. What do you want to do? You know, that was the height of that tension. Kind of died down, but now the Lord is bringing it back. It says Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them. Persia being Iran, Ethiopia, they still got their same name today. They're an ally of Russia. Libya, it says all of them with shield and helmet. Gomer and all his bands, the house of Togarmah of the north quarters and all his bands, and many people with thee. These are all the nations that are allying themselves with Russia. And there's more nations on the world stage, but it's not mentioned explicitly here in the prophecy, like China, for an example, like North Korea, right? But it says, be thou prepared and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. So that's what Yahweh set the Russians up to do in his grand movie, all right, this theater called Life, the world stage. They're set up to be a guard onto those smaller nations, all right, for eventually what? For World War III. So that when America, Babylon the Great, gets more involved in the Middle East, which they're already there, but specifically the Israeli-Iranian conflict, all right, once they get involved in that, which they already did with the B-52 bomber, but once that war gets more intensified and heated up, and basically those gutter rats start attacking them and genociding them, or trying to genocide them like they're doing to them Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, that's when Russia, the bear, is going to have to step in. And then that's when things are going to get ugly. This is the book of Isaiah, chapter 13. And I'm going to start at verse 17. It says, behold, I will stir up the Medes against them. The Medes, of course, we know that's an ancient Japhetic nation. All right, but if you look at their territory and where they dwelt at geographically, the people who are there now are the Russians, which are Edomites. So they're the ones that are playing this role prophetically. Okay, because once again, this didn't happen to ancient Babylon, as we're going to continue to read. And I could easily go to ChatGPT, just like Apostle Tahar taught us, just like he been doing, Even the chat will tell you when things are prophetic and when things actually historically happen. Because if it happened in history and it already took place, there would be a record of it. There would be, you know, some type of documentation of it. And there was never no documentation of ancient Babylon or the Neo-Babylonian Empire or kingdom being destroyed in this manner as we about to read. It says, behold, I will stir up the Medes against them, against Babylon, which shall not regard silver, and as for gold, they shall not delight in it. It says in the NLT, they cannot be tempted by silver or bribed with gold. So there's not going to be no way for America to get out of this Third World War with Russia, because they're going to be led into attacking Iran, which is Russia's allies, which is Russia's job to guard them, the job that the Lord gave them, according to Ezekiel 38 that we just read. And so nothing is going to be able to pacify the Russians. They're not going to take no bribe, all right? They're not going to take no money. They're not going to accept no peace deals. It's going to be all-out war at that point. It says, their bows also shall dash the young men to pieces. Their bows is going into nuclear missiles. And they shall have no pity on the fruit of the womb. Their eyes shall not spare children. Because once you launch off those ICBMs, everybody's fried. That's why it tells you in Isaiah 26:20, come my people enter thy chambers until the indignation be overpassed. Nobody could survive that. The elect is going to have to get beamed up. We're going to have to get beamed up into the sky in the Lord's chariots, so-called UFOs. That's going to be the only way out of this destruction. All right, everybody else that remains on the land is cooked. All right, Zechariah 14:12, Malachi 4:1. All right, the day that cometh that burn as an oven, roughly paraphrasing. You see, so there's not going to be no pity. The missiles are not going to discriminate, man. And they're not going to have no missile defense systems for those supersonic, hypersonic missiles that Russia and China and North Korea got. And I believe even Iran, but you know, it's not confirmed, but there's not going to be no way out of this thing, man. And Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldees' excellency, shall be as when the Most High overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. And that's the main point right there. Ancient Babylon, Neo-Babylon, was not destroyed the way that Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed. Everybody knows how Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed. Genesis, the 19th chapter, it was destroyed by fire and brimstone from the Lord from heaven. He rained down fire upon them. He basically nuked them without the actual nukes. He just made the fire just come straight up out of the sky, man, out of the heavens, and destroyed them and burnt them. Ancient Babylon wasn't destroyed that way, man. That's how America's going to be destroyed. It shall never be inhabited. Iraq is still inhabited to this day. That region of the world, which was the Neo-Babylonian Empire, you still got people living there till this day. It might not be the most ideal place in the world to live, but the scripture here is saying it shall never be inhabited. But it is still inhabited. So what is it talking about? It's not talking about ancient Babylon. It's not talking about that region of the world. It's talking about America. It's code for America. Neither shall it be dwelling from generation to generation. Neither shall the Arabian pitch tent there. Neither shall the shepherds make their fold there. So mankind is not going to be able to dwell in the land of America. It's going to be the forbidden zone because it's going to be a big ass desert. Humanity will not be able to survive living in that condition. So you can understand. After the missiles is done with this place. You know how they say not for human consumption. You know, certain things you can't eat or you'll die. Well, the land is not going to be fit for human habitation. Verse 21, but wild beasts of the desert shall lie there, and their houses shall be full of doleful creatures, and owls shall dwell there, and satyrs shall dance there. And the wild beasts of the island shall cry in their desolate houses, and dragons in their pleasant palaces, and her time is near to come, and her days shall not be prolonged. So it's happening, Habakkuk 2 and 3, all right? It said the vision shall speak at the end and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it. It will surely come, it will not tarry. Okay, these visions of a land being completely decimated, completely destroyed to where only animals are able to live there. We living in a time of that vision now, man. All right, like I said earlier, after the MOTB is mandated, that's when this Third World War is going to pick up. That's when this whole Israeli, Iranian, the South China Sea, you know, China, Taiwan. I heard that even Russia is basically helping. They're about to do a military drill with China to do an aerial strike on Taiwan. That's going to inflame this Third World War. It's tension all over the place, all over the planet Earth. That's a sign of Matthew, the 24th chapter. You shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, but what? The end is not yet, because we're waiting for the microchip. All right, once that thing is made mandatory, just like you see what's going on in the UK with the digital ID thing, you know, they're making it mandatory to work and whatnot for the citizens. Well, that's going to be all over the planet Earth. Then the digital economy eventually all over the planet Earth, and then the MOTB. And then that's when these things are going to really intensify and get to a nuclear level. And then that's when America is going to be completely eradicated. All right, if people can't believe that, especially if you're on the land, why would you, why would your mind allow you to believe something like that? It would take faith. It would take the Lord to open up your spirit to these prophecies, to this Bible, and with understanding and belief. You see, if you hear, nobody want to hear that. Nobody believes that. America's too strong. America's too big. America's too big to fail. Well, you about to find out, man. You fucked around, and now you about to find out. And so the Lord, man, he's making these prophecies come to pass, man. We live in some exciting times. But that's pretty much the point of the lesson. I already dragged it out long enough. I'm going to say, Kol Haloyim, La Yahweh Bashim El Shai, Bashim Rakakwadash, and Shalom to the elect. Shalom.